Madara versus the Shinobi Alliance is one of the most iconic fights in all of anime, so I thought it would be fun to talk about how each Hokage would fare when put in Madara's position to beat the entire army on their own. And here to help me today is the Sage of Thick Calves.
What's going on, guys? So good to be here, man. Thank you for inviting me on.
Before we get into the actual matchups, it's important to go over the part of the Alliance Madara fought, which is the 4th Division. The 4th Division obviously has thousands of Shinobi in it, and of these ninja, the 3 hardest hitters the Hokage will have to watch out for are Gaara, Onoki, and the Sage Mode Naruto clone. After all, they all have very dangerous one-shot abilities in the form of Onoki's particle style, Gaara's sealing, and the Rasen Shuriken that can all end an enemy immediately if they aren't careful. Do you want to expand more on the 4th Division?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever you look at the totality of the 4th Division, you have, like you said, a lot of heavy hitters, but then you also have a pretty versatile set of combatants that allow for a wide range of things that the Hokage and Madara in his fight had to worry about. So I think that whenever you take all those factors into consideration, you not only have to deal with the heavy hitters that you listed, but also people that might be able to hit them from long range, or maybe use elemental ninjutsu to catch them off guard. So yeah, it's a really tough challenge, but I do think that we've got a pretty good breakdown of who's going to be able to clear and who may have some trouble here.
Yeah, speaking of people who clear, the first Hokage, Hashirama, definitely stomps them.
Oh yeah.
He's essentially just a stronger version of the Edo Madara that already beat the Alliance. Put into context, Hashirama came up against the Ten Tails, which was soloing not only the 4th Division, but the entire Alliance, and immediately put it down with DD Gates with ease.
Yep.
So he could probably just honestly give 3 DD Gates for Gaara, Onoki, and Naruto each, proceed to summon the 1,000-arm statue, and stomp everyone. Like, what are they gonna do? They're just dead.
Literally nothing. Yeah, they just get like pummeled by the 1,000-arm Buddha statue.
Realistically, the best win con I could think of is maybe particle style because it ignores durability, but Hashirama's too fast to get hit. He could arguably regenerate from it if it affects him in the first place, and then he just stomps everyone. Like, I'm sorry, the 5 Kage just aren't on Madara's level, and they're certainly not on Hashirama's either.
Yeah, even Madara himself said that the 5 Kage were an embarrassment and nowhere near Hashirama's level. He says, the only person who could stop me is Hashirama, and he's not here. And he's staring down the 5 Kage at the, so yeah, nobody there is really on that level at all.
But the next Hokage, Tobirama, is actually a bit more interesting, specifically because, at least individually, he pretty confidently scales over Onoki, Gaara, and the Sage Mode Naruto clone, but with all of them together, he's gonna have a bit of a hard time. Tobirama doesn't have any durability feats throughout the series, so it's going to be very hard for him to avoid getting hit by like a stray jutsu that could take him out. Obviously, I think he might do pretty well. I could definitely see Tobirama getting the drop on Gaara or Onoki because of how fast he is, but it's still going to be an uphill battle for him to clear the entirety of the 4th Division.
Yeah, I think the only thing that, and we talked about this prior, but like the only thing that I think gives him even a semblance of a chance here is if he's able to use reanimations and imbue them with the tandem paper bombs. But it's like, to get the reanimations, you might have to argue that he has to have prep for that. And now, you did make a good point, though, whenever we were talking about that he might be able to use, like if he kills some people on the battlefield, depending on how long it takes for him to make them into reanimations, maybe he could kill a couple fodder shinobi, make them into reanimations, and then implant the tandem paper bombs on them, and then kind of just use them as kamikazes throughout the entire battlefield. But I don't think he would have enough time to do that. I think that with the speed and power that you get from Onoki, Naruto, etc., it's really tough to argue that he would have the time to do that. So I think he just has a really, really hard time here without that on his side.
Yeah, we see when Orochimaru uses the Edo Tensei that it actually requires like a really intricate seal on the ground, and the problem is the entire battlefield is made of sand, so if he tries to use that and places it on the ground, Gaara could probably honestly just break it by splitting the ground under it apart, in which case Tobirama would be screwed. Again, the tandem paper bombs like destroyed a DD gate, so if he gets it off, I think he could probably solo the Shinobi Alliance with it, but the problem was getting it off in the first place, and other than that, he has no large-scale attacks that can take out hundreds of people at a time.
Exactly.
He has his water style jutsu, but we see that in the 4th division there are a lot of earth style users that can use Mud Wall, and in the same way that the Mist Shinobi were able to counter like Madara's Majestic Destroyer Flame when they all combined their jutsu at once, I think the Aiwa ninja could probably do the same to Tobirama's water style, which leaves him with no real win cons. He probably just ends up beating everyone up for a few hours straight before eventually running out of stamina.
Well, I think that, you know, even with the FTG, it gives him sort of the ability to bounce around the battlefield, you know. But like you said, he eventually is just going to run out of stamina because he doesn't have those wide scale attacks. So yeah, I think Tobirama puts up a good fight, but takes an L at the end.
Moving on, I think next up we have someone who has an even rougher time than Tobirama does, and that's
Yeah.
Hokage Hiruzen. To be fair, he does have the reputation of being the strongest of the 5 Kage, and you could argue that it applies to Onoki and Gaara even in the present day, since Onoki's an old man, so he's not getting a lot stronger. And we see that Rasa, who was around during Hiruzen's time, was able to clash pretty confidently with Gaara, so at least individually he should be stronger than them. But the problem is we already saw Hiruzen's stamina, and it only lasts for a couple hours against Orochimaru, so I don't see him doing much either.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you give him the Edo stamina, like with unlimited chakra, and we assume like a prime Hiruzen based on his feats in the war, then maybe you could make an argument that he puts up a pretty good fight. But even then, his strong suit is just his wide array of elemental ninjutsu that he can use. And that's not really going to do a lot against Sage Mode Naruto at that point in time. I know that there's at some point in the war, Hiruzen sort of references knowing about Onoki's particle style and stuff. And so maybe he would know the ins and outs of that and know he has access to that. And so you could argue that he would be prepared for it. But even if you give the most generous interpretation, he just doesn't have the attack potency to put a lot of these people down. And even if you want to argue that he might have the attack potency to put some of them down, again, I don't think he's putting down Sage Mode Naruto at this point in time.
Next up, we have Minato, who actually does a lot better than everyone before him except for Hashirama. We know he was already extremely used to taking out large squads of shinobi during the Third Great Shinobi War, and while he hasn't really taken on a group this big, I think he still might be able to do it. First of all, it's important to note that he kind of has the same weaknesses Tobirama does, in that he doesn't have a lot of durability, but what makes up for that is the Toad summons, and specifically Gamabunta, that can cover a wide range with his water bullets. Like, it was able to obliterate entire forests instantly, so it could probably take out like dozens of shinobi per water bullet, and then stack this with the fact that Minato is way faster than everyone on the battlefield, including Onoki, Gaara, and Naruto. I don't think they can do anything to stop Minato. He's a monster here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if depending on what you consider to be canon, there is that anime clip of him like telling all of the Leaf Shinobi to throw those kunai out there, and he like kills 1,000 Shinobi or whatever. So like that's insane. And if you want to disregard that as non-canon because it's anime only, that's fair. But I think that the implication that we get throughout the entire series is that Minato sort of is a squad wipe like type of fighter, because he can just throw a bunch of kunai out there and bounce between all of them, just taking people's heads off along the way. So Minato, whether it be with summoning Gamabunta or just blasting people with his Rasengan, like he's a problem. he's just straight up a problem. And then you take into consideration his stamina. I mean, him going up against Kurama and Obito, defeating Obito, then going on to split the Nine Tails in half, seal half of it in him, then the other half into Naruto, then some of his and Kushina's chakra into Naruto, and still didn't die from chakra exhaustion, but being like impaled. Like, his stamina is otherworldly, so I think that he wouldn't have any problem fighting a prolonged battle, and nobody in that division should really be able to keep up with him. So I think he clears this pretty easily. It should take some time, but there's just really nothing that they could do against his speed.
Yeah, the way I see it playing out is he takes out the Kage pretty early, and then he can rely on Gamabunta to clear the rest, since Gamabunta was fighting entire Biju, who were considered to be these like army level assets by all of the villages. So I think Gamabunta has a really easy time against swaths of shinobi that are basically fodder and would only really get to you if you run out of stamina.
Absolutely.
next up is probably the person who does the worst on the entire list. It's Tsunade. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, Tsunade is extremely strong, but Gaara, Onoki, and Naruto all kind of hard counter her. Like, you could make a decent argument for her being the strongest of the 5 Kage, due to destroying Madara's like Susanoo ribcage and leading the fight, but Onoki's particle style counters her regeneration, Gaara's sealing jutsu counters her regeneration, and Naruto's Rasen Shuriken counters her regeneration. So she just gets hard countered by every member of the 4th division.
Yeah, and it's not. I've been accused on my channel of being a Tsunade hater. I love Tsunade. She's one of my favorite characters. I think she's awesome. It's just like she's a one-trick pony, you know. She is one of those characters that just goes in and brawls, and I love that. Like, she's just in there running hands and like destroying, like you said, Madara's Susanoo ribcage. She's cool. But like, that's not doing anything against a massive body of shinobi that includes high-level combatants that, like you said, can hard counter her. So yeah, as much as I love Tsunade and as much as I would be rooting for her here, yeah, she's just like, what is she gonna do? Naruto throws a Rasen Shuriken and Onoki launches a particle style, like, and then Gaara comes in with the Grandma's limbs. She's not doing anything there. So yeah.
The best I see for Tsunade is maybe taking out like a few hundred shinobi if she summons Katsuyu off rip and tries to like nuke the battlefield the same way Sakura does, but beyond that she just completely gets destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, next up, we have a pretty surprising one who we think can win. We got Kakashi, who actually has a really good chance. Common narrative in the community is that Kakashi is weaker than he was in the war arc due to losing the Sharingan. But in the novels, he was actually directly stated to have become more powerful since he was fighting Obito and Madara, which is very impressive because during the war, Kakashi has great feats like easily keeping up with 6th Gate Guy and fighting the V2 Jinchuriki that were somewhat able to damage KCM1 Naruto. Like, he was an absolute monster, so to get significantly stronger than that is crazy.
Yeah, I think genuinely Kakashi slams, and I know that might be a really strong statement to a lot of people listening, but he's verifiably stronger now. That's not a question. But then, like, you want to look at how much stronger is he, right? So, like, in the novels, he's able to erect a mud wall around an entire city and keep it up for somewhere between 12 hours and 24 hours. Based on the Prime Minister's statement, it was almost a day. Based on the statement earlier on, it was over 12 hours. So somewhere in there. But, like, this is a mud wall that is said to be the size of a small hill, so somewhere around like 30 meters. So this dude erected a mud wall of 30 meters around an entire city for somewhere around half a day to a full day, and then went on to fight the Prime Minister, who had a tool that was left behind by the Sage of Six Paths that used water that is created by Six Paths chakra, and he countered that with his normal fire style multiple times. So, like, Kakashi's AP has increased, his stamina is ridiculous. The Shinden was able to cut right through one of Nue's tails, and Nue is directly compared to like the tailed beast. So Kakashi is easily one of the strongest Hokage, and yeah, I mean, I think he's got the stamina to take care of business here. I think he's got the AP to do it as well. And genuinely, his speed advantage is what I think he would rely on heavily here, because he's faster than the Raikage in the Hiden novel. So, or he's faster than a combatant who blitzed the Raikage, so therefore faster than the Raikage. So, I mean, like, Kakashi's a monster, and a lot of people really heavily downplay him.
Yeah, this is especially shown in the anime where, and admittedly, this is really weird, but he does pretty confidently scale to Kashi and Koji, who is fighting like a Jigen at 10%. And Kashi and Koji actually ended up winning that. And admittedly, again, Jigen was weakened to 10%, but he beat Six Paths Naruto and Sasuke. So even at 10%, he is far beyond Gaara, Onoki, and anyone else. So Kakashi scaling to that pretty much lets him clean up house.
Yeah, well, and Koji is pretty confident that he's able to take out Delta, and Delta fought on par with a suppressed Six Path Sage Mode Naruto, like swapped hands with him for a good amount of time. So like, that gets Kakashi up to that suppressed Six Path Sage Mode Naruto range. It feels weird to say that, but like, I think you could confidently get Kakashi to like base Hokage Naruto range. And when you look at base Hokage Naruto swapping hands with Fuse Momoshiki for a brief moment in the manga, like that's impressive. So yeah, Hokage Kakashi is no joke whatsoever.
Yep, and even if you don't really like these hardcore power scaling feats, even narratively, the Hokage is typically considered to be the strongest Kage of the 5 nations, and we know that Kakashi was Hokage at the time that Gaara and Onoki were both Kage, so him being far beyond them is pretty consistent narratively as well.
Yeah, and if you just want to just to put a cherry on top of it for me, the what his fire style water mist jutsu, it said if you read it in the translations I've been able to find, it says it moves at the speed of a flash, but that kanji in Japanese can mean either flash or light. So like take that as you will. That attack could move at the speed of light. So like he's I'm just saying the dude's a monster, you know, and I think that he should pretty easily clear this.
Alright, moving on. I think the next one is pretty obvious. We have Naruto,
Yeah,
and I think this is an absolute stomp. Even
yeah,
worse than Hashirama. The Shinobi Alliance essentially lost to an Edo weakened Madara, and then Naruto comes in base 6 paths and stomps 10 tails Madara, so I think that's a pretty clear line of scaling, especially since when you consider that the entire alliance got taken out by 2 meteors, and then Naruto comes in and he's capable of nuking like 5 massive Chibaku Tensei with all of his
yeah.
Rasen Shuriken. So he can just do the same thing to the alliance and they essentially get one tap.
What are they gonna do if he goes into his giant Kurama avatar and just starts firing Bijou bombs?
Yeah, it's over. To put into perspective, one of their strongest fighters is a shadow clone of Sage Mode Naruto. I don't know what they're
Right.
gonna do.
You know, six path Sage Mode Naruto. Even if you just want to say like, I think base adult Naruto could just speed blitz and wipe every single person in the Shinobi Alliance at this point in time.
Yeah, he like scales to Otsutsuki. I don't know what they're
Yeah.
gonna do. Moving on to our next contestant, it's the 8th Hokage
Oh
Shikamaru.
God.
Listen, if you want to be generous to him, you could say, hey, he caught 2 Otsutsuki in Shadow Paralysis, so maybe you could argue he could like hold Gaara and Onoki down, but after that, he still has to deal with the thousands of Shinobi that are gonna jump him, so I have
Yeah.
no idea what he's gonna do. He just dies instantly.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of content made about Shikamaru here recently because of, you know, him being announced as the 8th Hokage, you know. And for some reason, people have really ignored a lot of the context that you get from the novels. Some people have been very clear and concise about it. But like NC Hammer 23, for example, has done a really good job explaining this. But like there have been some other creators that have talked about how he held the Kage, you know, in a shadow paralysis, and then completely ignored the fact that like after he holds the Kage and then leaves the office, he's frustrated. He goes on a walk and he like uses his shadow strangle on a tree and can't even splinter the tree, like, and then he realizes essentially that they were just being nice. So like for some reason this has been floating around in the ether that Shikamaru is like tiered above the other Kage in Boruto, and I'm like, no, that's not the case. And you know, if something happens and he becomes this like Otsutsuki level threat now after the time skip and stuff, I will admit that I am wrong. But so far from what we've seen, he's tree level, and I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to check out Sage's channel. I'll have one of his videos linked on the end screen. And yeah, make sure to subscribe. Later.